Go ahead.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. My name is Lucas Schaefer. I'm the Mending Program Coordinator at the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center. I want to thank you so much for tuning in for another interview during Sexual Assault Prevention Month. So make sure that you're connected to all of our social medias. That's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, for all the information. Our fundraiser, if you want to access that and donate to that, is there as well. Today, we're interviewing an amazing person, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Let me just do the noob thing of getting my camera up. There we go. Welcome. I know I've been the one doing all the interviews, and yet we haven't heard my perspective on things. So thank you so much, Lucas, our Mending Program Coordinator, for doing this interview during a very important month.
Amazing. So, to get this started, I want you to tell me about your role at the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center.
Certainly. Yeah. So my name's Alisha Fisher. Pronouns are fluid, whatever you feel like. I'm down for. I'm the Prevention Education Supervisor with the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center. So I do all the community engagement, whether that be doing our education, talking to folks, educating folks about all different topics surrounding sexual violence, allyship, supporting survivors, and creating trauma-informed spaces, bystander intervention, as well as social media work. So I manage our Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram accounts.
Wow, yeah, that's a lot. Thank you so much. But yeah, so you mentioned that your title is Prevention Education Coordinator, and I'm really interested to hear from you what prevention education means to you or what it looks like.
Yeah, prevention education really comes from a lot of different angles of understanding what it is you're trying to prevent, right? Obviously, sexual violence is something that is impacting a lot of people, especially in the communities that we serve and support. So it's not only knowing about the issue, but also learning about its impacts and how we can then support people. Yes, of course, we've never had it happen to us. So, we don't need to know about KSAC. But what you can do with this knowledge is to be able to support people, to educate folks, to know about the supports and resources that are available in your community. So prevention education looks a little different than harm reduction, but prevention education is kind of like what the title even says itself, right? You are preventing via education and learning about these topics such as sexual violence. Whereas the harm reduction is more about mitigating that harm or lessening that harm. So, we hear about the safe injection sites as a way to support folks, to provide a space to engage in these coping skills in a healthy environment and to access supports if needed. So prevention education has been kind of a new title that my role was initially was more about public education public education, but that prevention side is really, really important. And so that's why these conversations start all the way in kindergarten. We have discussions, obviously age appropriate discussions with kindergartners all the way through high school, college, university, community organizations, workplaces, athletic teams, etc.
Wow. Thank you so much, Alicia. And thank you for drawing that distinction between like prevention education and harm reduction and how they work together. If you had to choose, I'm sure this might be a difficult question. If you had to choose one of your favorite topics for prevention education to
Bystander intervention.
deliver, bystander intervention, tell me why.
Oh, hands down, bystander intervention. Not only is it scientifically proven as one of the most effective workshops in combating gender and sexual violence against gender minorities, sexual minorities, and gender and sexual majorities, according to the discourse that was in the research. That's not obviously how I would acknowledge it, but bystander intervention provides a deeper level to understanding about sexual violence. Yes, it's important that we know about what sexual violence is and its impacts, but how do we get involved? How do we make a difference? And I think about the continuum of harm and how at the base of the pyramid, we have a lot of bad jokes, statements, trolls online, locker room talk. And as we move through the pyramid, it gets through this more reinforcement of jokes to reinforce behavior, such as these stereotypes, to harassment, to various forms of assault and abuse, and ultimately the murder, right? But that's all justified within this pyramid. And so we may not see assaults happening. We may not see murders occurring. But what we do see quite frequently in our lives are those jokes, or hearing those jokes. And so that provides a much larger opportunity for getting involved. And I think a lot of people deep down want to get involved. They see this as a worthy cause, but whether it's influences by their gender, especially as men, and you're supposed to be this dominant, assertive guy, and if you're not being dominant and assertive, then you are deemed as less than. And I think that a lot of guys in particular are looking for ways to get involved and to be an ally, a leader in ending these conversations, or sorry, and engaging in these conversations, but ending the harmful discourse surrounding that. So bystander intervention, by and large, is my favorite workshop. It's fun, creative, and also can prevent a lot of harm from occurring.
Oh, that's wicked. Yeah, and thank you for that awesome explanation as to why it's your favorite too. So I know this has probably been like in your mind as of recently too, right? Like because of in this past year, prevention education looks a lot different now with COVID-19 and everything just operating online with events and fundraisers and how you connect with community. And to kind of reminisce a little bit, what was one of your favorite things to do prevention education wise in a classroom that you're looking forward to afterwards when things are open and available again?
It's always just being there and hanging out. I always learned so much. Even though we have a presentation that we have to go through, every classroom brings a new vibe, a new way to have these discussions. And students always ask the darndest questions because it's what they see, right? And even though those questions are difficult and may be seen as inappropriate, it's important that they recognize that this is a space to ask that question and to get an answer, to be able to navigate when they see that question or those harmful statements being said out in the quote unquote real world. My favorite thing is literally just hanging out, just wanting to learn more about the questions that they're having, engaging in healthy relationships and consent, which ultimately creates better teamwork skills and better leadership opportunities, right? Engaging in ending gender-based and sexual violence is resume-based material. Like, it is what sets you apart from other candidates. And so I love having these conversations because it is something that impacts everyone in a variety of different aspects of our lives. You need consent with everyone for everything. And I think that there's really fun and creative ways that you can ask for consent, especially when we're engaging in intimate connections with long-term partners. And I know it's kind of moving away from the school zone, but well, it comes up in universities, but that's my favorite part, just really connecting with people. But we're really we've really definitely shifted over the last year. It was almost embarrassing because a lot of our volunteer engagement went up like hundreds of percentages, but actually went down 27% in prevention education. And what that ultimately comes down to is it paints a really clear picture that a lot of educators right now are really focusing on mental health, really focusing on being in crisis with students, right? There's been some reports on CBC that have come out about special education and how 2/3 of teachers are not believing that the students are going to be able to complete their education this year. It's a really big struggle. And so our shift has gone from education to now like crisis support through an educative means, right? So we're dropping off care packages. I'm driving up to Halliburton, dropping these off to the youth hub up there. And I think it's just really important to get connected to our center, to know that our supports and resources are out there. And when we're able to be back in person, and we can still join you virtually, but we're here free of charge.
Wow, thank you, Alicia, and thank you for talking about like what we're doing currently too at the center. Wow, that's super interesting. That survivor kind of mode that we're operating in prevention education. With our time coming to a close, I want to ask if you have a final message that you're going to say to the survivors and their supporters who might be watching currently.
Yeah, and I feel like this has been reiterated so many times, but it's so important to know that you're certainly not alone. We're connecting with new survivors every day that are learning about, what has happened to them, and knowing that there are supports out there, and that, we have our 24/7 crisis lines of support, but you don't necessarily need to be in crisis at that moment to access that support. If you're ever just feeling down, just connect with us and we can connect you with further community resources if needed. for survivors out there to know that this is a really difficult time. And if you don't access support right now, that is okay. You are doing what you need to do to cope, to survive, to thrive in your own way during a pandemic. Like, reminder, we are in a pandemic. This is a really difficult time for a lot of people, and your struggles are 100% valid. In terms of a message for their supporters out there, especially during Sexual Assault Prevention Month, I really think about three different things: awareness, allyship, and advocacy. So being aware of what sexual violence is and that it's impacting 1 in 3 women in Canada, 1 in 8 men in Canada, and 1 in 2 trans and non-binary individuals in Ontario. To know that sexual violence has a variety of impacts and that it shows up differently for every individual. And ultimately, allyship. So how are you supporting those individuals? Do you know about those local resources? And finally, advocacy. So going out there, talking to government officials about the need for funding for these sexual assault centers. We have had a substantial increase in access to our 24/7 crisis supports, as well as our front desk and counseling access. So we are seeing these increases. So how are you advocating for the betterment of your community? And that is through our sexual assault center. So getting involved in awareness, allyship, and advocacy are the three things that I really push our community to strive towards to be great leaders.
Wow, thank you, Alicia. And would we be able to share those different crisis lines?
Of course.
Awesome. And all of these crisis lines are also available on our website at kawarthasexualassaultcenter.com. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and sometimes TikTok. Hey, if you're looking for a way to advocate for the center and support, we have an ongoing fundraiser right now. So donate what you can and share it widely. But I want to thank Alicia so much for sharing about what her role means and what prevention education means to her. And I hope that you all have a wonderful day. Take care.